Hi, everyone. So, several of you asked me for a more intimate, more personal story, or just a switch up of genre. And I figured, since a lot of your personal stories I've really enjoyed, I figured I'd share one of my own. So, back in 2000, my mom called me on March 26th and said, sweetheart, I'm just want to let you know that I am super broke and I don't have any money and I don't have any money to send you a birthday present. So I'm really sorry. And in that time, I had actually just came back from my yearly doctor visit, my GYN, and they found a lump in my breast and I needed to answer all these health questions and that's kind of scary stuff. Well, my mom is adopted, and so I couldn't answer a lot of the questions that doctor asked me about my family history. And, of course, except for my mother, but, that can only go so far. So they asked, if there's any way to find out more information about my biological, sort of biology. And it's been something that I had wanted to ask my mom for quite some time. The adoption conundrum is quite challenging for many adoptees. So this was, I think, maybe the third time in my life that I broached the subject again with my mother. And my partner was sitting next to me. I was squeezing his hand, and I said, Mom, actually, the birthday present that I would love more than anything would not cost more than 42 cents for a stamp at that time. And she goes, okay, well, what is that? You just want a card? I can send you a card. I said, no, Mom, I actually would really love for you to contact the Spence Chapin Adoption Agency and find out any non-identifying information, if it's at all possible, just sort of medical history stuff, And I felt like, oh my God, that's like the hardest thing I've ever asked of my mother in my life. And, there was like dead silence on the other end. And I'm just like, oh God, I've upset her. And, it's going to be this whole thing. And, and it's complex, the adoptee thing. So I didn't really want to push that little tender spot and remind her there's this big wound there. And, so really mindful of that. And she said, okay, I'll think about it. I don't really have any personal interest in delving into that can of worms myself, she said. But, you're asking me this, and, I hadn't really thought about it in that way, to just look up biological information and see if I can get any history stuff, and so that would be great. I'll consider doing that, it's different. And so I hung up the phone with her and just like breathed a sigh of relief and, felt like I might, this might lead to some better information to help my, with my sort of medical fear in the moment. And anyway, about 2 weeks later, my mom calls and she says, okay, so I've been processing this information for about a week, and I'm sorry. But I, happy birthday. And, and, I had a very interesting conversation with the, adoption agency woman, and, they're not allowed to really give me any kind of, information without me sort of signing some documents. And, she said that just the way she spoke to me, Mariah, I really feel like there may be something more there that I have been a little bit afraid to look at. She said that, you know, it might be that your biological grandmother has released all identifying information. You know, that's kind of a big deal amongst the adoption world, is often they're sealed, you know, sealed information. And for, you know, 50 years, my mom's adoption record had been sealed. So even if she had wanted any of this information, she couldn't have gotten it. But she got some kind of hint, you know, that felt real, that, you know, maybe the adoption agency had more revealing information than most adoptees get. So my mom calls me with this information, and she says, you know, I sat on this for a week and for several days thinking, you know, I just couldn't even tell you that, because telling you that meant that I would have to consider looking at more information, because it's sitting there, and, you know, apparently it wasn't before, you know, so more recently has become available. And she's like, I'm just been processing what that feels like to consider. And so we had this really great exchange, and she had decided to do it without engaging me. And she was sitting there with her very first contact from her birth mother, which was in the form of a handwritten letter. And she was reading it to me over the phone. And the letter was beautiful and lovely and so powerful. And next thing I knew, by my mother's birthday, we were, just a month later, we were arranging to meet her mother, my grandmother, for the very first time on my mother's 50th birthday. Yeah, that's my story.